Fine, I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And we are the hosts of GeekNights. It's a podcast. If you really have nothing better to do than listen to us, that is the thing you can do with the rest of your life. There are like 13 years of podcasts that are totally free MP3s you can download on the internet. Do not do this. But you can if you really are desperate.
Bam. So here's the deal. We are here to talk about 40 tabletop games. And many of you might have played these games before, etc. We're not going to take you through the rules of all of these games because we only have like 55 minutes.
We're probably not going to get through all 40 games, if there are even 40 on this PowerPoint PDF.
There is a number of games on this panel. But anyway, here is the deal.
We have never done this panel in the allotted time.
These are not the best 40 games.
No.
We're not going to say that these are the top 40 tabletop games. We don't even like all of these games.
That is definitely true.
2, these are not the most important games. Caelus is a worker placement game. It's arguably the first or one of the first worker placement games, but it's not actually that fun by modern sensibilities. We don't actually need to play Caelus. So if you're a historian, maybe you should play it, but otherwise, just because something is the first of something, just because something is the best of something, just because it has an interesting story, does not mean it makes it on this list.
Basically, we're trying to say is don't come up to us afterwards saying, oh, this game, oh, this game, oh, this game. We don't need to hear from you.
A game makes this list if it illustrates at least 2 interesting or unique things about gameplay or game design that is not covered by something else on this list.
Also, if you have played all of these games, you will be so well-rounded in your gaming knowledge that you will be able to play a new game and say, ah, this is a lot like that game.
This is just Caelus crossed with Jungle Speed. I see what's going on here.
When we play board games that are brand new, that's tend to what we say. We say, ah, this is like this and this together, or I see that this has the same mechanic as that other game.
Yeah. These are not our favorite 40 games. I like that anime. That anime is dumb.
It's real bad. Don't watch it.
I like a lot of games that are bad and dumb. I like a lot of games that I think are good that you are going to think are dumb. Some of the games on this list I think are dumb and bad games. But you got to understand them. You got to play them. You got to see what's going on in these games. There's a lot of games that you're going to expect us to talk about because they're new and hot and fancy and everyone's excited about them, but they haven't stood the test of time. We don't know if they're important yet. We don't know if we need to talk about them, and I don't have time to play all of them before this panel. This list is in a literally random order because we do not care who wins in a fight between Puerto Rico and Batman.
It also really reduces the effort of making this panel because we don't have to organize the slides. You just throw them together.
We have definitely missed a bunch of games, but I hope we don't have to tell you that chess exists. So we're skipping a lot of the basic games. And we really don't care if we left something off this list that you think is really important. Because, frankly, there's a lot of tabletop games. This is like a tabletop golden age.
There have been more tabletop games released, in the last year than the past 10 years or something like that?
There's a statistic like that that's terrifying. Someone in the stream is probably already Googling it and correcting it for us.
Right, the point is you probably think that's a good thing, but maybe it's a bad thing.
Yeah. This list changes every time we run this talk. And in fact, we've changed it specifically for PAX Unplugged because you aren't just regular PAX attendees. You're here for tabletop only.
And not only are you here for tabletop only, you're a tabletop specialist. You already know the basics, right? Right? We're going to go hard mode? Okay.
We're assuming you guys know a lot about games, and we're going to avoid talking about a lot of very simple details. But most importantly, the whole point of this panel is that a lot of people play one kind of tabletop game. Like they just play Dungeons & Dragons. They just play Magic. They just play Shay Geek over and over and over again. But the way to be good at games, even that one game you really care about, is to play a lot of different kinds of games and to know what all those different games' deals are. If you get good at all games, you're not just a gamer, you're a player of games. We used to reference a sci-fi novel, but no one seemed to ever get the reference. That's called A Player of Games, so we just gave up on that.
It's a good novel. You should read it.
You should read it. We're going to get right into it. So, Wizard.
If you ever played euchre, you ever played hearts, you ever played spades, any trick-taking game, Wizard is maybe not the best trick-taking game ever. There's a lot of trick-taking games lately, but we played this one a lot. Once we learned it, our group was playing it multiple times at every PAX, and the best part is you have this really fun deck of cards with this crazy artwork on it.
Now, a few years ago, when we'd give this talk, we'd point out that trick-taking games are pretty unknown among tabletop gamers. They're not really part of like the Eurogaming set. But recently, there's been a renaissance. There's tons of games that you wouldn't think of as trick-taking games coming out that incorporate the mechanics of trick-taking. So Wizard is the best possible game to introduce Eurogamers to the concept of trick-taking and following suit and trump cards and all that nonsense. If you like Wizard, you're gonna like every other trick-taking game. Wizard is also interesting and unique because one of the cards in this game looks exactly like our friend Scott Johnson.
He's enforcing right now, right? I think he's enforcing right now, so you can go see him. Do you have the artwork on here?
I do not have the artwork on here.
That's a shame.
Dune. This game is hard to get. This is a board game based on Frank Herbert's Dune, and it's been out of print forever. It's like an Avalon Hill game. It was re-released as a game called Rex with a different skin, but you gotta play the original Dune. This game has two interesting things about it. One, it is super unbalanced, and everything is overpowered.
Right, so usually when there's an asymmetric game, right, it's like, you know, it's like, oh, Guile is different from M. Bison, right? Okay, whatever. But in Dune, if you pick any one of the 6 races and you look at the list of powers they get, it's like, oh, whenever anyone pays to bring troops to Dune, I get the money instead of the bank. What? That's like if you buy properties from the bank in Monopoly and a player gets the money instead of the bank. It's insane. But everyone has insane powers, and it evens out. It's like everyone is OP. Who can win?
Yeah, you look at these rules, you pick a character, and you think, there's no way I can lose. This is ridiculous and broken nonsense. And literally everyone is thinking the same thing. What happens in a game when everyone thinks they're OP? It's really funny. The other thing about this game is that a lot of games have a theme. Like Root has a cute theme. All these games have themes, and they have game mechanics. Very rarely do these line up 100%. It's very difficult to make that happen. This is the only one. This game lines up 100%. You play this game with people who have never read any Dune book, never heard of Dune, don't know nothing about Dune. They're gonna play out the Dune novels on their own. It just happens.
I played this game many times before reading Dune fully, and yeah, it's the same thing.
And it has a third interesting thing about it. Shared victories. You can make a coalition with someone else and just win together. And one of the characters' powers is that they write down the name of a player at the beginning of the game and a turn number. It's the Bene Gesserit, if any of you read Dune. If that player wins on that turn, the Bene Gesserit win instead.
So I'm the Bene Gesserit. I'm in an alliance with like 3 people, and I predicted that one of them would win on turn 5, and our alliance wins on turn 5, so I win instead.
But never has a game married themes so well to mechanics. Many of you have probably played old Dungeons & Dragons.
Actually, I don't think many people have played old Dungeons & Dragons.
Has anyone played original Dungeons & Dragons?
Yeah, see, only some, right? The point is, if you want to play old D&D today, it's kind of a pain. You got to get old books. The books are not written that well. This is a new game that is basically the same feel, the same everything as old D&D, but it's a new, modern, streamlined RPG that's a lot more fun.
Yep, like the Euroification of an old, so you'll get all the experiences of going into a dungeon, dying because you can't get the treasure out because the treasure's heavy, you're not trying to fight things. It is all the experiences of old D&D without the hassle of old D&D. Zendo.
Oh, there was a new printing of Zendo recently. We used to have to buy these ice house pieces, that's what those pyramids
These are real expensive. It ends up being like 80 cents per piece, and you need like 300 of them to play this game.
Right, so if you don't have a whole bunch of ice house pieces lying around, I just suggest going and buying the new copy of Zendo. It's not as good as the original, but it's good enough, right? But yeah, this is a game in which one person is the master. Right? They will create some sort of rule like, a cone exhibits the Buddha nature if all pyramids are large. That's a really simple one. A really hard one would be, a cone exhibits the Buddha nature if the sum of the pips on all the pyramids is a prime number.
As soon as you get into and, or, x, or, nor, you're in trouble with your friends.
Right, the point is, right, the players are trying to figure out the master's rule by process of elimination. They make groups of pyramids and arrange them and say, is this one good or bad? And by eliminating and guessing over time, eventually someone will learn the master's rule and become wise.
So the two things about this game, one, it takes an infinite number of players You can just have any number of people playing this game, and 2, it's one of those games that creates a spectacle. You know, you're in Tabletop and you see a game and like people keep walking over like, what's that game with 1,000,000 cubes and what's going on here? Unlike all those other games with 1,000,000 cubes, this one, if people walk if people walk over and see the spectacle, you can turn and say, would you like to play? And
they can start guessing right away. And someone can leave and say, I give up, and just go away.
So, many of you have probably played Monopoly, and you know to never play Monopoly again.
Right.
This is an old indie board game. It is hard to find. It is basically all the feelings of Monopoly. You know how like in food and restaurants people talk about like the mouthfeel of food? I like to talk about brain feel. This game has the brain feel of Monopoly, but it takes about 45 minutes and it ends. But it is just Monopoly.
You really just roll the dice, go around the board, landing, buying spots, right? Filling in the middle of the board. That grid in the middle of the board is actually a representation of the United States geographically. It doesn't make any sense now, but if you play it, it'll be like, oh, that's New York. That's okay, right? But yeah, you go around the board buying stuff. People land on your stuff. You get money. Same thing as Monopoly, only way short. I
enjoy playing this game, which is weird because you wouldn't think anyone would enjoy playing a game that looks like this. Tigris and Euphrates. This actually is our favorite game. It's one of the best games I've ever seen. It is a very tight, reactive, competitive, simple, and elegant German-style board game. It takes 4 players, no other number of players works effectively, and you should play this game. This game is so good that it has stood the test of time. We've played it hundreds of times.
I've played it since like 2002, and every time I play it, I'm still like I've not mastered it. I don't have like a set thing, right? Other games like, you know, Settlers or Puerto Rico or whatever, I can tell you exactly what to do on your turn. That's the best move, that's the way to win. T&E is like this crazy game that's different every time, even still after 16 years.
And the interesting thing about it, it has something really to call Rainier Knizia scoring, because Knizia likes to have like certain kinds of scoring in his games. And the scoring is you're getting points of 4 different colors. Your score at the end of the game is whichever of the colors you have the least in.
I got 100 red points, 100 black points, 100 green points, and 2 blue points. My score is 2. Great.
This game got updated and released as a second version called Yellow and Yangtze, which is slightly different and just as good.
We don't know if it's just as good yet.
Spot It. Spot It looks like a little baby game that you would bust out in a kindergarten, and yet if you play it among adults, it is super hard.
If you are from a different country, such as the UK or the Netherlands or wherever, it will not be called Spot It, it will be called Dobble. It is the same game. You can also get different versions of this game. I have Halloween Spot It. I have a friend with Spot It Splash, which is made of plastic, so you can play on the beach or on a cruise ship, right? But yeah, this is the ultimate friend-making game. You're gonna play this in line at PAX while you're waiting to get into something. You're gonna play this pretty much, you know, in the airport while you're waiting to get on a plane.
It can take between 2 and about 40 players. It takes literally 30 seconds to teach someone how to play this game. And if you've ever run into this gentleman,
he has Spot It in his pocket at all times.
I have seen him make hundreds of friends at PAXs in the span of about 20 minutes playing this game just with strangers. Many of you might have run into him at a PAX in the past. Shogun.
Oh, you put this on there?
AKA Samurai Swords, AKA Ikusa. It keeps being re-released. This game has a long and weird history. Here's the deal. It's Risk, but it's playable, and it's interesting.
It still takes a long time.
But it takes about half as long as Risk.
Yeah, and it has a lot of fun things Risk doesn't have. For example, you can hire a bunch of Ronin, and it's like, okay, I know that Rim hired a bunch of Ronin this turn, but I don't know where they are. So I attack one of his castles. Yup, that was the one with the Ronin in it. Here they come. Ah, crap.
Imagine if Risk had like 2 more mechanics that actually made it an interesting game that wasn't just everyone gang up on the friend that they hate. And this game has actually interesting combat because you have pieces on the board and you have armies off the board, and the armies are moving around the board independent of like the peasant pieces on the board. So when 2 armies clash, you roll a lot of dice and you're making decisions about...
And the best part is the dice you are rolling are your unused, unloved D12s. You use almost exclusively D12s for all combat in this game. Get those babies some use.
Puerto Rico. We just did a panel yesterday teaching everyone how to play Puerto Rico. It should be on YouTube after this con, so you'll be able to see it. Puerto Rico is probably the most elegant, most well-designed, engine-building European board game there is.
Right. If you don't know, it's not currently #1 on Board Game Geek, but it's still single-digit rankings. But during our life, from like early 2000s through like a very many years, it was #1 on Board Game Geek. It was just locked in. Everyone was like, "Yep, that's the #1 game." Period. And only games that are pretenders have now displaced it.
A lot of games will do these kinds of mechanics, but they tend to do them fairly inelegantly. This one does them so elegantly and so purely that it's such a good game. Everyone who wants to play games, design games, anything, should play it.
And if you're one of those people that always complains you lose because of bad luck, this game has no luck in it whatsoever. None.
If I win, I was smarter in the context of this board game than all my friends at the table objectively, and I can hold this over their heads for the rest of their lives. And if I lose...
They can't be like, "Oh, I rolled a 1, that's why." No, there's no rolling.
If I lose, I hope they forget that we played a game of Puerto Rico. Hanabi.
All right, there's a lot of co-op games out there. We'll probably talk about some of them on the upcoming slides, but this is the best only real co-op game that I have seen, right? And basically the way it works is normally when you have a co-op game, not everyone has to contribute. A lot of them are just like solitaire, right? But your friends could help you, like Pandemic, boo, right? Hanabi, the way it works is on your turn, you either have to play a card or tell someone something about their hand. Why would I have to tell someone something about their hand? Because everyone's hand is backwards and you can't see your own cards.
So you play cards blindly, and you better not play the wrong card because everyone will hate you. And even better, this game, co-op games, the problem with almost all co-op games is that because you can talk at the table, the games become basically not co-op games. One person knows the right thing to do, and you either agree with them or you're wrong, and you lose the game for everybody. Or they have those stupid rules like you can kind of talk about your hand. "Hey, Scott, I'm pretty sure I can take that challenge. I'm too sure I can take that challenge. I have 2 blue cards in my hand." So to avoid that, this game has an information economy. You have a limited number of resources, and you can spend a resource to tell someone a piece of information about their hand. Information economies are rare in games. I can think of one other game that has it. It's Res Publica by Rainer Knizia. Vinci, how many of you have played Small World?
All right, so Small World was actually a redo of this game. This game had a lot of problems, mostly the fact that the rules were printed poorly, there were a lot of typos in the rules, there was a lot of errata going on. So rather than just fix this game, they made a whole new game, they streamlined it, they made it a lot fancier looking, and it sold a lot better and made a lot more money. Good job. But Vinci, if you play it correctly and learn the right rules and go to Board Game Geek and get the erratas, is actually more fun, I think, than Small World. Right? In Small World, you're sort of limited, right? You'll have like skeletons and then like a modifier on the skeletons. In Vinci, you can have skeletons, effectively speaking. Right?
Barbarians
is really fun. You bring a lot of guys on the board. Also, the European map really gives people a lot more real-world context, and it tells sort of a more historic story when you play it. And it's also a good risk replacement. It takes a lot less time.
The thing this game illustrates, if you can get a copy of this, like good luck, but it's really worth playing, is that Small World is a better designed, more elegant, more thematic game that has a lot more like care and polish in its design. But it ends up being less competitive and arguably less fun. This game doesn't just end after 8 turns, it ends after a player gets to a certain point on the victory track, but then everyone else gets to take their turn. There's a lot of posturing. This game is a lot more open and has a lot more strategic input from the players, and also a lot more random input for ridiculous nonsense to be dealt with. So it's not as locked in as Small World, and ends up being a more satisfying experience. Between Two Cities.
Right, so there's Between Two Cities is a really fun game because it's sort of co-op. You're working together with your friends, but you're still only one person wins. And the way this happens is it's a drafting game, kind of like Seven Wonders, and you get 2 rooms, or 2 buildings, and you put one in the city on your right and one in the city on your left. So you're sharing each city with one of your neighbors, right? So you and your neighbor are working together to make this city as good as possible, and this one as good as possible, and at the end of the game, the one next to you that has the lower score is your score, right? But meanwhile, your neighbor is working with someone else in that city over there, right? It's like, oh man.
So I gotta make both these cities pretty good, but not too good if the person on the other side of that player is doing well.
Right.
This ends up being a fascinating mechanic because you're trying to balance between two. It's basically conflict of interest, the game.
Also, recently they came out with Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. There was another board game called Castles of Mad King Ludwig. They combined it with Between Two Cities to make Between Two Castles. I think Between Two Castles is just like replaces this game completely.
Bohnanza.
Who likes games where you trade stuff with people? Right? Yeah, you like trading? No, I guess they don't. All right, well, too bad.
You know how hard it is to actually trade with people? Like if you play Settlers with people who are good, no one's trading anything with you unless they're ripping you off. And you're not trading with them unless you're ripping them off, so no one's trading.
Right, in Bohnanza, this is a game that forces you to trade. If you are tired of trading games where trading does not happen because it's not a good strategic move, Bohnanza is the game for you. You get beans in front of you that you either have to plant or trade, and you don't want to plant them.
The other thing it does, to the point, there's only 2 games I've ever encountered do this, to the point that we call it Bohnanza Hand. You get your hand of cards and you're playing the game. Cards come into your hand on one side and can only come out of your hand when you plant them on the other side.
Right, usually when you're playing a card game and you have a hand of cards, you can just shuffle the cards up all you want. It doesn't matter. No, in Bohnanza, you cannot rearrange the cards in your hand. Your hand has a front and a back, and they move in and out. Right?
And this sounds complicated and difficult to use, and it is difficult to teach, but once someone learns this, it is a fascinating mechanic that opens up a lot of interesting ideas in games. The other game that uses it is an indie Japanese game called Wind the Film. That is fantastic.
Hearthstone actually recently has put out cards where the order of cards in your hand matters.
Ooh.
So that's 3 games.
Camel Up.
All right, anyone here like going to the horse track and betting on horses? Why would you do that? It's really bad. Don't gamble. Gambling is awful. You're going to lose all your money.
You know the aesthetic of the guy like in Street Fighter who's in the background with his betting cards like, come on, add nuts to that.
Right. If you want to role play being that guy, play Camel Up.
You're betting on a camel race. That's it. You're just betting on this random camel race. Camels are moving around, you're just betting on them. And that is literally the entire game. One thing this illustrates is that sometimes a really dumb, really simple, pretty random game is super fun, even to jerks like us who want to play these pure European skill games. And 2, it's called Camel Up, not Camel Cup, because the camels go up. So the camels stack on each other. Camel lands on another camel, and then the bottom camel moves. Camel on the top got pulled along with him.
There have been a lot of situations where like one camel is obviously in last place. There's no way it can win. No one bet on it. And suddenly its dice comes out of the pyramid first. It's on top of another camel. And suddenly everyone's rushing to place bets on that last place camel.
You can tell this is happening at a PAX because there's a table that starts getting louder and louder and louder as this game goes on to completion. So yeah, we're like super serious board game purists, and we also play super dumb games that are really fun.
Also, the dice roll out of a pyramid like with rubber bands on it. It's a really cool toy.
Tales of the Arabian Nights.
Who likes a choose-your-own-adventure game? This is that. It's like a giant choose-your-own-adventure book like this that some nutjob wrote. Congratulations, nutjob, I bow to your greatness.
I do not like this game.
No, I don't.
But I appreciate this game. The deal with this game is it's sort of a role-playing game, sort of a board game, and you just like move around in this Arabian Nights world trying to achieve quests, and you end up in the city of brass, and a genie asks you something, and you don't role-play in a normal sense. You don't role-play like, I attack the genie with my sword, or I beg the genie for forgiveness. You choose a type of reaction, like I will react with piety, I will react with kindness, I will react with anger. And it tells this very simple, sort of almost meta story, and you fill in all the blanks yourself using this ridiculous giant book and references and cross-references and cards, and then your gender changes, and then you get married by accident, and then you marry the genie as well, and now there's trouble. Eclipse.
So if you played a Master of Orion, this is the Master of Orion, the board game. But what's really great about it is when you play those 4X games on PC, right, they're so complicated. They have so many numbers, right? But you're on a PC, so the computer does all the computation for you. You don't got to do anything. And you can sit there and look through all these menus at all these numbers, and you got all the time in the world, right? What's your hurry? With Eclipse, you got friends sitting around the table. They don't want to wait for you. And you also can't bother calculating all these numbers. So what it does is it takes Master of Orion and other 4X space games and compresses and abstracts and simplifies to the point at which there's no more numbers because everything's been simplified into board game pieces that you can understand. And you can take your turn pretty quickly and finish this in hours still, kind of long, but not as long as playing a Master of Orion 2.
Not as long as Twilight Imperium.
No, not nearly.
So the important part about this game is if you play it, the physicality of the pieces is the clever thing. the way they have used the physical pieces to represent these very complex and abstract concepts is amazing. It's a very brilliant mechanism, and if you play it, you'll see what I mean. And two, this illustrates a broader point. The best way to get good at game design and gameplay is to play and study tabletop games, because you can't rely on the computer, you can't rely on complicated mechanisms, you're always forced to distill and distill down to an essence of a game. The game has to fit inside of your head and a reasonably sized table at the same time.
And a cardboard box.
Ogre, I guess, technically fits in a cardboard box.
So people love legacy games these days, right? Which is understandable because that's actually a new hot innovation in tabletop gaming. But this was sort of the mini legacy before the legacy games. The way this game works is it's a bidding game where you build pyramids and put out farmers and get victory points. You know, a little Euro action, right? And then you finish the game and you clear everything off the board except the pyramids. And then you play again. Right? So it's like you're playing the game twice, but the second one is the legacy game, right? It's kind of cool.
But the real mechanic of the game is bidding. Bidding games are very interesting because bidding is a game designer's lazy way out. You don't have to worry about, well, should this card be worth 5 or 6? Should I pay 4 or 8 for this thing? You just let the players figure it out in the course of the game. Oh, I'll bid 5 on that. I'll bid 1,000 on that. One of those two people has made a terrible mistake.
I also have good news about Amun-Re. It's been out of print for a long time, but there is a brand new edition that I saw in the expo hall today, and that's where I heard about it for the first time. So go find it.
The other great thing about this game is it has many different kinds of bidding. Like, bidding is a big part of good games, and there's a lot of bidding in this, and a lot of the bidding is simultaneous. One of the bidding mechanics is you all decide how much money to donate to the gods in the temple.
If you give the gods a lot of stuff, like
collectively,
here, have all my money, everyone gives a lot to the gods, then the farms do really, really well, right? The gods are like, okay, good weather for you people, you sacrificed a lot to us.
But then the traders don't do that well because everything's flooded, they can't get anywhere.
But what you can also do is say, you know what, I don't want the farms to do really well, my territories don't have a lot of farms. I will steal the things that other people have sacrificed to the gods and keep them for myself.
So it has bidding, it has legacy, and it has cooperative shared spaces where the players together make a decision that affects everyone. There's a lot packed into this relatively simple game. So here's a bidding game. Quantitative easing is very simple.
This is in First Look, there's a new edition also.
It's worth playing. You have an infinite amount of money in this game because you are a sovereign bank for a nation.
You just make money, you're like the mint.
So a thing will come out that is worth, say, 4 victory points. You write down secretly any number.
Any integer.
1.
0.
A billion.
Not a negative one. Has to be positive. Positive integer or 0.
Whoever bids the most wins that thing. And you keep playing until everything is auctioned off. And then whoever has the most victory points wins, except whoever bid the most total money is eliminated from the game, and then you score. You gotta play this. This is an experience, and it also, the unique thing is it illustrates the value of toy games. Very simple games that have basically one mechanic and explore that mechanic fully.
And what's great is that even if no one bids something ridiculous like 2 billion, someone's always the highest bidder who spent the most money. Someone always gets burned, right? It's great.
So, you know those train games? You see the people at a con like this, like they're in the corner, they're playing a game with trains. And I don't mean trains like Ticket to Ride. I mean trains like that nonsense. Whole bunch of crap. They got stock certificates and companies and just giant
usually a
boards.
Bunch of old people and not young people playing this game.
Yep. These games take like 4 hours or 4 days or 4 weeks. They play them by mail. Like that nonsense. That's a whole world of gaming that most people who go to modern tabletop cons don't really engage with. I'm not saying you'll like train games. I'm not saying you should like train games. You should play at least one train game to see what the deal is, because even though it seems like a weird, almost archaic type of gaming, it's really popular for a reason. There's something there. There's a reason people play these games. And if you want to know what the deal is with train games, 1846 is the easiest and most accessible one of these to play to see if this is your jam.
Yeah, they call them 18XX games because there's 1846, 1849, 18 whatever.
1889 is my favorite.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. But this is the easiest entry one. The one that we played first anyway.
The other thing unique about this game is it does something like a lot of train games do. You have a company, and you are a player. You have money, your company has money. These are independent of each other.
I could buy his company. You could sell this company.
I will drive my company bankrupt into the ground because that benefits me personally.
I will take all the money out of my company by embezzling.
I will take over Scott's company, drive it bankrupt into the ground, and give it back to him. Root is kind of the new hotness. Like, everyone's playing it. You've probably seen
Kind of the new hotness?
How many of you have a friend who's like obsessed with Root and you're trying to avoid playing it with them?
Oh, no, it seems like they want to play it.
This is really a complicated, like, grognard asymmetric war game with a really cute animal theme to trick you into playing the complicated asymmetric war game.
It's really great. When they made Root, it was like the ultimate ruse. It's like, all these games about the Civil War and the Cold War, none of the normal people want to play this. Only the old bald dudes like Scott want to play those games. How come we can't get anyone to play these scary war games with like miniatures and stuff? What do we do? Oh, I know, let's make the same exact game and put woodland animals. I know everyone wants to play.
So like the communist partisans, it's just cute little rabbits with a little bomb, and it's adorable, but they kill all the foxes, like every one of them. Oh, and the other thing about the game, it is asymmetric, just like Vast. Every player is playing with different rules, like completely different rules.
If you're the one player is like this army of cats that's like the Roman Empire completely covering the board. If you're the raccoon, you're just one little dude going around adventuring like your D&D character. And you're both getting victory points. One of you will win, one of you will lose, but the game is completely different based on who you choose. So it's really like 6 or 7 different games based on your character.
Let's talk about minimalism. Those are all the pieces in a game called Elkfest.
We know they're not elk, they're moose. It's a language problem.
The words elk and moose translated between English and German is actually a weird and complicated situation, so don't worry about it. That's all the pieces. One, this is a dexterity game. It's a flicking game. Flicking is a mechanic in some board games. Like, flick like that.
Flicking's really hot lately. There's a lot of catacombs going on.
It's also really hard to do well, as you'll find if you ever try to play Crocodile.
You can also play this game literally on any surface. We could play it, for example, on this table. We could play it on this room.
We could start at two ends of packs and just start working toward each other.
The idea is you got a moose, and you're flicking the stepping stones that the mooses have to step on to get from one big platform to the other big platform. Yes, you will have to meet the other moose and cross together somewhere along the way, and whoever steps on the other person's moose platform first is the winner. That's it.
Don't discount dexterity games. I know we're all nerds playing nerd games at the nerd convention, but this is technically a sport.
It's a sport.
And two, minimalist games, like really minimalist games, are sometimes the most fun experiences because they're usually very quick to teach, so you can just play them immediately and avoid the problem of, hey, you want to play this cute game called Root? Well, let's spend 4 hours learning the game, and then we'll have 4 hours of fun. Let's spend 1 second learning the game and have 30 seconds of fun. You know, there's a table somewhere in this convention, and there's a bunch of people like doing this and being really annoying. That's what this is. This game is called Mafia, called Werewolf. It's public domain, so people like keep re-releasing this with different names.
And different variations. You got Resistance, you got the Avalon Resistance,
yep.
You got the one night werewolf in a box.
A lot of games take the core idea of this, which is a social deduction game, and then they add something to it, they twist something. This game is notable because if you play it, you'll see echoes of it in so many other games. And this is the original one. This is the root. This is the seed of that. It's one of those games where you're sitting in a circle, and some people are secretly bad, and some people are secretly good, and you're trying to figure out who the bad people are and do something bad to them before they do something bad to you. That's it. You've all played that game. But this is the purest one. And it's interesting because game designers like to use this as their first project. Everyone tries to rewrite the rules to Monopoly, and then, when that fails, they try to rewrite the rules to Mafia.
Yeah. Yep. Also of note, no one plays this game the way it was originally intended. I'm not going to waste time now explaining it, but if you want to know the real rules to original Mafia, come and ask me. I will actually answer that question. I will not answer any other question.
And if you play this game with the real rules, kind of like Monopoly, if you play with the real rules, not saying it's good, but it's way better.
It's better.
Battletech.
Oh, yeah.
Not the computer game. The computer game's real good, but that doesn't give you the experience we're talking about.
No. There's a lot of miniatures games out there. You know, you get your Warhammers and stuff, right? Battletech is the one that I think, even though it doesn't look accessible...
Look at that nonsense.
It is actually quite accessible. Everything you do in this game is roll 2d6 and look at a table and it tells you what happens. But because of that, what ends up happening when you play this game is you get sort of this really realistic experience where you can do almost anything. Like, can my robot like smash you into the side of a mountain? Yes, we have a rule for that.
Yeah. What if I want to just jump on top of a dude? What if I want to rip my own arm off and hit him with it?
There's a whole section of the rule book about jumping on top of people. Can I just chopped his arm off. Did it explode? No. Can I pick it up and bludgeon him with it? Yes. My leg fell off. Do I fall over? How good of a pilot are you?
Can I make a robot that has no arms and no legs and is just a bunch of missiles? Yeah.
Can I make a robot that is like on 4 legs like a dog? Yeah, you can do that too. But yeah, robots blowing each other up, but you can do pretty much anything, and it's really fun to fill in if you like filling in like, bubble sheets when you're taking tests, but having it not be a test where you're all stressed out at school. It's like, yeah, when you get hit, you get to fill in bubbles on your sheet, which cancels out the unfun of being hit with the fun of filling in bubbles.
And the other thing this has is it's more realistic, not the robot part, but the other parts, to what like fighting and military stuff is actually like. And the reality is that things like that tend to be pretty random. So if you play this game, a lot of emergent narratives arise. We have a character sheet that a friend of ours kept to this day, where he has a perfect, pristine 80-ton mech, and he's filled in the head. Because a railgun hit him in the head in like the second round of the game and killed his pilot, and that was the end.
The robot just stood there the whole rest of the game like this. You can also play a campaign. You can also add in role-playing. There's so many modules for this, so if you get way into it, you can go deep.
If you want the experience of sitting, looking at a table while someone rolls dice, 2d6, center torso, 2d6, center torso, 2d6, right torso, roll for crit. Oh, his ammo exploded. Ah! This is that game. So,
I don't know why people still laugh at this, even though we've told this joke like 10 times.
I love Magic. I played Magic up until about the Fallen Empires era, and I thought it was dying, and I quit.
Recently, for the anniversary of Magic, they posted a timeline of Magic, and I realized that I played Magic from the year 1993 to the year 1994.
The reason you should play Magic, I don't need to explain Magic to you, you've all encountered it, is one, it has lasted so long that you gotta know what the deal is. There's a reason why people still play Magic today.
Right. So
and that Magic, this is the more important part, it is recognizable and pretty much the same core rules as the Magic I played in middle school in like 1994.
There are also so many card games that Magic just steals from, that they steal from Magic, they borrow from Magic, they do the exact same thing Magic did. Magic invented all those things, right? Before Magic, like none of those things existed at all, right?
Yeah, does anyone remember Jihad or Sim City, the collectible card game?
Those came after Magic, I think, I'm pretty sure.
And they were still bad.
Yeah.
Or the Dungeons and Dragons one, which we will not speak of, which I played. That was a mistake.
But anyway, yeah, you can go get 2 free starter decks, play Magic with your friend for free to learn to play Magic, and then do not play any more Magic.
Unless it's your thing, and then you can be that person who just plays Magic at PAX, and that's fine.
I hope you are wealthy.
There's drafts. You can play drafts.
You still need money.
But it really is notable that the rules have been pretty much contiguous for the entire run of Magic, that to this day, I'm an old man who hasn't played Magic in like a decade. I could sit down with one of you punk kids, play Magic, and know the rules, and it'll be fine.
Mostly.
Yeah, the only thing I won't get is like interrupts changed, and like banding is different, but otherwise it's pretty much the same.
I don't think they have banding anymore.
Someone's laughing about banding.
I don't think it exists anymore.
By the same token, Dungeons & Dragons is almost the opposite of that. The rules of Dungeons & Dragons today are unrecognizable from the rules of almost every other edition of Dungeons & Dragons that are all themselves mutually unrecognizable.
That's why we told you to play Torchbearer. If you want to play old D&D, just play Torchbearer instead. But if you want to play new D&D, well, play fucking new D&D.
But the deal with Dungeons & Dragons, the reason you should play it, and the reason it's interesting, the opposite of Magic, the rules are radically different, and the game has re-emerged and evolved and died and grown and changed over this giant span of time. But the feelings people get and the reasons people play it have stayed the same. The style is consistent, the play is consistent, everything about it is consistent except the rules, and almost despite the rules, depending on what edition you were playing. And that is worth exploring. Even if you're playing super hyper hardcore indie RPGs, play some Dungeons & Dragons just to see what the deal is, see what gets everyone on this train.
Who likes an escape room? Not me, I don't like escape rooms.
Scott hates escape rooms.
The point is, if you want to have an escape room but save a lot of money and not actually go to an escape room, you can just buy, there's 2 series of games. There's Exit the Game, and what's the other one? Unlocked?
Yep.
Right? So Unlocked, the way that one works, is you get an app, and you get a deck of cards that are in the box, and it sort of does an escape room for you on the table, and you can replay it. Exit is much better. Exit, you open the box, there's an escape room in there, you don't need an app, but you can only do it one time because like you're tearing up pieces of paper and we made like a little like see-through thing, like a dial.
At one point, I'm just like licking a piece of paper to see if something would happen. It didn't, and I felt really dumb.
Bring a UV light with you, it might help, I don't know. Right? But yeah, you can go, there's a whole series of Exit the Games, pick any one, whichever one has the theme you like. We like the Egyptian one. For a good starter. Open it up, sit some friends around the table, and you'll do an escape room on the table. Get it. You need a timer to make, because you're basically judging yourself by how long it took you. If you figure out the whole thing in 15 minutes, good job. If you figure it out in an hour, maybe you're not so smart.
The interesting things about these games are that, one, they really do replicate very accurately what physical escape rooms are like. It's the exact same kinds of puzzles.
There's really no reason to go to a real escape room if you haven't played every Exit and Unlocked game.
But 2, they are also another solution to the co-op system, because the co-op situation in this game is that you're all just collectively trying to solve a puzzle together, and having a reasonable number of players just debating and interacting and futzing with cards is a really fun social experience that doesn't break down in the way that, say, old Pandemic would break down.
Also, something that happened is like we got clues, and some of the clues were obviously for one part of the escape room, and some clues were obviously for a different part of the escape room. So we sort of divvied them up, and some people were working on solving one riddle, while the other people were working on solving another riddle, right? If you had to do it alone, which I guess you could open one of these and try to do it on your own, it'd be a lot harder.
What was the one where we couldn't communicate with each other in the 2 groups until we found the radio?
That's Unlocked. That's the app one where you split into groups, and it's like, well, you're not in the same room, so you can't talk to each other right now. Yeah.
Quartermaster General. So, full disclosure, Scott is banned for the rest of his life from playing this game.
So I complained,
and I need you to enforce this.
So this game was so fun, I loved playing it, but every time I played it, I got way mad because I would get burned on my hand and I couldn't do anything. And then they came out with an expansion, and the expansion does exactly what I said they should do.
Unfortunately, you already got banned.
To fix the game so that wouldn't happen, and now they won't let me play, even though they wouldn't play when I suggested it, but now they'll do it when the expansion says it's okay.
You shouldn't have gotten yourself banned.
Maybe you should have just let me do what I wanted.
So, you know Axis and Allies and how it's not a good game? And you probably shouldn't play it?
Oh, someone's upset.
This has the brain feel of Axis and Allies, but it plays out more like an elegant modern Euro game. It's very elegant, very simple.
It's actually a card game. You draw from a deck, and on your turn, you play a card, and that controls your armies, and then you draw cards, and it goes around. Right? And you alternate. You get 6 people to play it, and 3 people are Axis and 3 people are Allies, and you sort of alternate turns in a specific order, and the game ends when one team gets to a certain score. Right? Who score in a war game? Yeah, right? It's, it's pretty good.
And the other interesting thing about it is that in the real world, war doesn't come down to who has the coolest tank, as most of Wikipedia will tell you and a lot of shouty guys on YouTube. It comes down to logistics and how much materiel can be brought to a front and all that kind of supply chain nonsense. This game is actually a simulation of that part of war. Planning. You're not thinking, I'm going to attack this city with 4,000 dudes. You're thinking, I'm going to put pressure on Russia this turn. I'm going to secure my holdings in East Asia this turn. You're thinking on this very abstract level. You feel like a real general playing this game. It's the same kinds of inputs you would have in a real war.
Right, when you're a general, you don't have these micromanaging skills you have in StarCraft where you can make a specific dude move his leg this way.
Yeah.
Right? You're controlling things at a very, very high level by playing a card.
And also, I cannot stress enough, this is just better than Axis and Allies, but otherwise it's pretty much the same kind of game.
It's better than a lot of games.
Fury of Dracula.
Right, so there's a lot of hide-and-seek games out there, some new ones, some old ones. Scotland Yard or Mr. X is like the original, right? But
the problem was we solved it with an algorithm.
We did. But Fury of Dracula is maybe the best hide-and-seek game. 1 player is Dracula, and 4 players are vampire hunters. Mina Harker and whatever, right? And they all take turns, and then it's Dracula's turn, and he moves. But you don't know where Dracula is. He has this hidden movement cards, where he puts cards face down in a row to show where he's been, and if they bump into a place, like, they go to a city, they go to London, Dracula was here 3 turns ago, aha! Where could Dracula have made it in 3 turns? It's somewhere in maybe, northeast, northwest France.
Oh, what if he got on a boat? Oh no, we left a vampire behind on the boat. Oh no, now we gotta fight this other vampire.
Right, that part of the game is amazing. It is the best. It is super fun. It's 4 versus 1. How many board games are 4v1? That's great. The problem is once you catch Dracula, at least in the second edition that we played, I think there's 4 editions now.
Yeah.
I've told it's better in the newer editions. Someone will have to tell me because I haven't played them. But in the second edition, when you actually caught Dracula, you had to do this combat that really sucked. So let me know if the 4th edition is actually better or not. But the hide and seek part is so good.
And the other interesting thing is the hide and seek works because of the physicality of the game. The way they design Dracula's movement is brilliant. And because, a problem in games, you can't have players doing things that other players can't inspect at some point because it's easy to cheat or it's easy to make a mistake.
Yeah, Dracula could just be like London, Moscow. How are you going to know? He's one player, right? It's playing cards face down that you can't look at. What if he cheats?
So you're reading this rule book and there's a whole section that says, what if Dracula cheats? And there's rules about it. And in fact, because it's in the book, Dracula could cheat on purpose if he wanted to. The rules are there, so it's not cheating. This game has an exception mechanism to catch errors to prevent the game from crashing.
Right? If Dracula gets away with cheating, probably going to win because you're not going to catch him because all your solving is not going to go right. But if Dracula doesn't get away with cheating, probably going to lose. He loses like half his blood and all this stuff. So it's not good.
Board games can crash just like video games, and this one has a mechanism to prevent that crash. That alone is amazing. Captain Sonar.
We just talked about a game that's 4v1. How about 4v4? Oh, snap.
4v4 real time. Team versus team, submarines, you're trying to blow up the other submarine. Everyone has a role, and the thing that makes this real interesting is what you're doing in the game is one of you is the captain making moves, and other people are doing stuff. One person, the signal intelligence officer, is just listening to what the other side is doing and trying to figure out where they are. That's it. That's the whole game. This is just such an interesting experience. It's part role-playing, part serious war game, part real-time game. You'll see a game where people are sitting there silently, no one's saying anything, and then one team's like, move north, and suddenly the other side's like, move west, torpedo, and it just goes crazy. Race for the galaxy.
We already talked about Puerto Rico, but it's kind of hard to play Puerto Rico on the toilet. I mean, you can, but it's not really that fun. It's mostly fun against other people. Race for the Galaxy, you can play against the AI on the app on your phone, and it plays really fast. I can play like 3 games in one poop. It's awesome.
But the reason to play this game is that, one, it is a similar mechanism to Puerto Rico without the baggage of colonialism and like really bad themes. And 2, it made up its own language to play the game. All these icons are so well designed that a lot of you probably didn't notice this slide is in French.
Yeah, it's like you look at these icons, and if you've played this game, you already know what they all mean. But if you haven't played the game, it's a bunch of confusing mess. But eventually you learn to read all these symbols and what they mean, and once you can do that and play Race for the Galaxy, you can also play Roll for the Galaxy. You can also play all the Race for the Galaxy expansions. There's like a whole set of games that use these same graphics, and as soon as you learn what these symbols mean, you can play all of those games very, very easily. It's kind of awesome.
How confident do you have to be to design a game where people have to learn an entire language before they can even play your game? And yet we all learned it, and it's great. Many games fail to do this. They have done it so well. It's like the example of how to make good icons in games. Lady Blackbird is a role-playing game you can download for free on the internet. It's always the same characters. It's always the same story. It starts in the same scene in media res. It's Star Wars crossed with Firefly, and you can play it with no role-playing experience at all. And the core mechanic is something brilliant. It's literally, hey, this is just like that thing we did that one time. And then you make up a story from your past for this character, and as a result, you're making up the story for the future by doing the thing that's next. So you start in the middle, and you write both forward and backward and tell a story like that.
And even though it's the same characters in the same scenario every single time, even if you play it with the exact same people playing the exact same characters, it will be a completely different thing in both directions every single time you play it. And it's great because it requires no preparation, no character making, no nothing.
You can print this out at that FedEx right now and play this at PAX with no training, no experience, no planning.
And it won't take that long either, unlike a lot of RPGs that are like 5-6 hours. You can get this one out.
So poker's not actually that fun for people who play good tabletop games. Pandante is if a game designer, a modern game designer, wrote poker from scratch.
And included pandas, because they're cute.
It's not just flush, it's floosh. It's super cute.
You can get a floosh in this game, that's a real thing. And everyone at the table goes, floosh.
But the real deal is that, poker, if you're good at poker, you fold most of the time. Most hands are really boring. But in movies, someone always has a royal flush. Someone's always doing a crazy bluff, all in, it's all crazy. Every single hand of Pandante is everyone bluffing a royal flush all the time. John Company. So Puerto Rico has problematic colonial themes. John Company is also about colonialism. It's about the colonial takeover of India, the Indian subcontinent. But unlike those games, this is a historic, almost reenactment of that, and you play the people who made the decisions that made the East India Company do the things that it did, the horrible things that it did. Because you want to marry your daughter off to someone wealthy who has a nice hat.
You get victory points by getting your people in your family to retire into positions of honor or luxury.
So I'll tell the company to invade Hyderabad because I want my son to have some army experience so he can then be promoted and retire. That's literally all I care about. The war is an afterthought. This is a game where none of you actually care if the company succeeds. And in fact, I have tried to drive the company bankrupt multiple times playing this game because it won me the game.
Right, someone else is in charge of the finances right now. Let me burn this thing to the ground so they are disgraced and they don't get to retire.
This is like a tight historical simulation of what it's like to be a horrible colonial dickbag during this era. And it's a really good simulation of why those people were the way they were.
All right, who likes trivia games? Oh, you do? Okay, well the problem with trivia games, if you know my parents' copy of Trivial Pursuit Genus 3, right, is that if you weren't born in the right year, you don't know anything, right? And it's not a lot of fun when it's I either know it or I don't know it, right? It's in America, it's all American trivia. So I guess if you don't know anything about America, it's going to be a hard game for you. But I imagine everyone here knows something about the country that they are presently in at this moment, right? But the thing about this game is that you don't really have to know exactly the trivias, right? You can sort of guess. Right? You'll come out with a card, and the card will be about something like, I don't know, M&Ms, and there'll be 3 questions. One of the questions will be what year were M&Ms invented? The other question will be, where were M&Ms invented? And the third question will be, a number, right?
Yeah, how many M&Ms do people eat every year?
How many M&Ms do people eat every year? So you then place a cube on the board with your best guess on either the year track, the map of the United States, or the number track of your best guess. And then other people put their cubes out, and whoever gets close or exactly to the right answer gets more points, or less points, or no points, or loses points.
The important thing about this game is that you look at these names on who designed this. Friedman Fries, the German board gamer, helped design this game. So take a crappy trivia game and then design it with German board game sensibilities, and you see what's going on here.
I think his original game was either flora or fauna. It was either animal or plant trivia, I forget. But then the American trivia is much better because I don't know a lot about plants or animals.
Dominion. There's a lot of deck building games. Deck building has become a component of a lot of games. But Dominion is the only pure deck builder that has stood the test of time and has consistently worked. So if you want to include deck building elements in a game that you're designing, or you want to play games that have deck building elements, by mastering Dominion, you master the world.
Did you see what they announced yesterday?
What did they announce yesterday?
Clank, the dungeon.
Oh, Clank is super
dungeon
good.
Deck building, Acquisitions Incorporated theme for dungeon digging, but also legacy. It's a 3-way. That's a real game that's coming out eventually.
So if you've played all these kinds of games, you're set for that Ekink game. It doesn't matter which one.
I know we just told you about Root and all these other games that are simple, better versions of these old war games. You can play Quartermaster General, whatever. But you actually should probably play one of those old grognard war games.
They're always called the Battle of the Marne, and there's a million cardboard shits with unfathomable numbers on them.
Napoleon's worst year.
Someone asked me at PAX East what game this is. I have no idea what game this is.
If you really want to go hardcore, you can get Advanced Squad Leader, which comes with a binder.
Do not play Advanced Squad Leader. Find the table. There's someone at this con playing one of these old games.
I don't know about that.
Just go find them, talk to them. They'll be more than happy to include you in their game. They will, in fact, be desperate to include you in their game. You might like these games.
No, you won't.
There's a chance.
No, there isn't.
At least
play one, though, to understand, because then if you play this and then you play Root, you'll be like, I see what those nerds were saying.
Also, D&D technically came out of this world.
That's true.
Rolling America, roll and writes are getting hot these days. These are games where you roll dice and you write stuff down.
Actually, that Ganz Sean Clever is like the hot one right now.
Yeah, like Yahtzee. Remember Yahtzee? You've all played Yahtzee? Now there are good modern games that do what Yahtzee did without being mathematically solved. And they're just great. Roll some dice, write something down. Rolling America is the one to play to see what the deal is.
I actually really like Railroad Inc. Railroad Inc. is really good.
Railroad Inc. is real good. Yeah. But this one's much more accessible and quick to whip out. The interesting thing about these games is you can whip them out among non-gamers and they'll just play. You can bust these out at a restaurant while you're waiting for your food at PAX, because if you bust out some giant game with a million chits, you're going to lose most of them at a restaurant. You're going to get kicked out of the Applebee's. But Rolling America, you can play in the Omegathon line, you can play in a restaurant, it works just fine.
Also, everyone loves rolling dice.
The stereotype of German board games, the big, is that it's a bunch of wooden cubes on a board. But there aren't that many games these days that are just a bunch of wooden cubes on the board. They have other pieces. This is the archetypical cubes on a board game.
If you like a wooden cube, this is the game. And
this is the purest cubes moving around, political 5-player game, moving the king. This is like the German board game from the 90s. If you want to know what 90s German board games are like, you play this game. We don't like Pandemic. We don't really like legacy games. Pandemic Legacy is worth playing. It's half role-playing game, half legacy game. Even if you think you also, like us, hate games like Pandemic, you gotta play at least one to see the deal. Try this one. It's the best experience.
You don't need to buy a second box. Just do one box.
Only buy the second box if you're really into it.
Yeah.
Jungle Speed is a sport.
It's not Jungle Slow. It's Jungle Speed.
Don't discount sports in tabletop, because they're tabletop sports. And more importantly, when I was looking for a picture of this game, not only is that someone who broke someone's finger playing Jungle Speed, that is Jason Morningstar, the designer of Fiasco.
In 2006, 12 years of Jungle Speed breaking fingers.
So soon we're going to need the Players Union at PAX. And last and not least...
Oh, we made it to the end. It's a miracle.
A game without a table. LARPs it's almost a dirty word at cons like this.
Most people think of LARP, they think of scary vampire kids in the woods with foam swords. Don't do that.
Or scary vampire kids in the library making out in the back.
Do that.
But there's another tradition of LARPs. These mostly come out of Northern Europe and Western Europe. They're starting to come into the US. These are serious LARPs. Like one of the ones that I've seen is literally just a fraught Thanksgiving dinner among a family. These are games that take like 3 or 4 hours. You play them physically. There's like 10 or 12 players and a facilitator. Really simple mechanics. And Inheritance, because we don't have time to explain the deal with all these LARPs. Inheritance is a LARP like this, designed by Luke Crane, the same guy who designed Burning Wheel, who is here at this con. You can buy this in America, read a book, and play one of these giant 4 serious LARPs with 10 or 12 of your friends, and it'll be a peak or at least interesting experience. So if you want to know what the deal is with the Scandinavian LARPs that are all weird, and you want to have like a really emotional, tight experience, this is the one to find out if that's actually your bag.
Didn't Scandinavian LARP as a concept win the Diana Jones Award?
Pretty sure.
Or was nominated at least, I forget. Anyway.
I hope this was enjoyable.
I can't believe we finished on time. It's a miracle. If you enjoyed this, I guess you did because you're clapping, I don't know why. I just did this to get a free badge, but if for some reason your clapping was honest and genuine, if for some reason
Sorry, I sneezed.
If for some reason you were clapping sincerely, we have business cards and also a QR code. You can find out who we are and enjoy a lot of other content you shouldn't waste your time on.
Yes, we've been doing panels at PAX. This is our 49th panel at a PAX.
If you did not enjoy this and your clapping was insincere, as I hope, you should
take one of these anyway.
You should take one of these anyway. Go find an enforcer or the info booth or email the PAX email account and tell them that we sucked and they shouldn't keep giving us another free badge at PAX South, where we will be.
And like we said, if you enjoyed this, there are thousands of hours of us doing this. We've been doing a podcast for like 14 years. It's all free on the internet.
It's not all about tabletop games, though, so get ready for some anime and technology and other nerdy shit that you don't care about.
I play a lot of Overwatch. And thank you all. Enjoy the rest of PAX.
Okay. Let's see if someone asks me about the real Mafia rules now.